talk a little bit more about how this technically works and these signals are being sent without using like towers or anything?
Yeah, for sure. So it uses LoRa radio, long range radio, and it essentially creates a mesh network across all the wireless transceivers. It does have a GPS transceiver on it though, that basically when it can receive a signal from a GPS, it will mark that coordinate, and then once it loses signal, it will start dead reckoning, which basically means double integrating acceleration to figure out approximately where you are. Oftentimes when you're lost in the backcountry too, or there's an accident, you're only separated by 50 yards. This just happened to one of the most famous race car drivers in the world, arguably up here in Utah. He was like 50 yards behind his friends and then he flipped. They didn't see it and they kept going and he's dead, suffocated. So yeah, to answer your question better, it does use GPS just intermittently, and then it uses about a 10-mile range transceiver to broadcast that message. And say a friend is even 15 miles away, if it can link to an intermediary friend between like say 10 miles away, it'll broadcast that message an additional 5, essentially creating a mesh network.
Interesting. Something I was thinking about while you guys were talking was, like if I was going to buy this, my number one concern is safety, like quality checks, and, you know, I bang around my equipment, and what's the likelihood of me breaking this and that kind of thing. And your model was an initial like purchase for like $600 and then a $40 annual thing. Something I haven't seen any companies do that I think that with this technology you could do is like a maintenance or recycling program where, you know, every like 3 years or something they can send it in, get it tested, swap components, that kind of thing, where they choose to upgrade to, which I think could be a really interesting market segment too. Because a lot of times, like obvious supplier on these things use it once or twice a year, and then there's, you know, guys that'll go out and use it 50 times a year. Just something to think about.
Thank you.
So worse than, or arguably worse than the transceiver not going off when there is an accident, is it going off too often when there aren't accidents?
Yeah, so there's a button on it that just says you're safe. So if you press safe, it'll basically alert every transceiver that you're safe and cancel the alert. That's pretty hard to press though. So you actually have to be not incapacitated, and you can basically go and move the lock to say, hey, I'm safe. There's a false alarm.
Okay.
So it's done to the cylinder, right? This is kind of, I don't know, you probably thought about this, but when you're in an avalanche, you're probably completely separated from your snowmobile. So how will this be effective for finding someone?
There's a tether attached to it too, so if you fall, it'll also send the alert.
It'll take you with it?
No, so tether meaning like if you fall off a treadmill, I guess that tether's the wrong word, but almost like when you fall off a treadmill, if the magnet detaches,
It'll go out there, right? But it won't be with the person.
You'll be close. It'll give you a ballpark estimate, and when you're in an avalanche, that's when you whip out your avalanche transceiver, and that's really what that's used for. That's a 50 meter radius you're using your avalanche transceiver for, not 10 miles.
I just want to say you guys' use of humor, and you guys seemed very friendly, and I thought that was great. Kept me engaged throughout the presentation. I think that was definitely the best part of the presentation in my opinion. But I wanted to ask about the ask. I don't want to get too into the weeds on the finances, but 15 million seems like a lot. Seems like a lot.
Yeah, the valuation is a little high. It is our total investment ask. So we're open for negotiation into seeding, and we're looking at breaking that up between investors.
We also have revolutionary marketing strategies. You might have heard the 3-step system. That's kind of guaranteed.
Okay, understood.
Yeah.
Question on the valuation of the product. How did you get there, and what kind of margin did you work?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So when you value the product and the device and then the subscription, what is your margin that you're working with in your, or how do you get manufacturing?
Margin is in manufacturing margin. Each one can range from $100 to $200 to build. We don't obviously have like a large scale manufacturing margin yet, but it's relatively cheap to build. Really what goes into it is actually physical labor, not so much component sourcing.
I want to say well done on your guys' presentation. The visuals were great. Everything was consistent between the three of you. Your tone, your pacing, nothing was like jarring about any of your presentation. Even that moment where you were all together and saying that
you guys have plans to branch into other sports, high interest sports or anything like that right now?
Yeah, for this product, it was specifically skiing, but I kind of ended up taking this idea and actually doing something a little bit different that I actually do more often and might be honestly a little bit easier to implement. So that feels like biking and motocross.
We're also looking at branching out and approaching rescue teams and maybe even getting into ATVs.
How are you gonna protect this from competitors just replicating it? Do you have IP, or is it that hard to make, or how do you do that?
We don't have any IP, but it does take a substantial amount of effort to make a device like this, especially for these large reputable companies. Because I'm not saying we're going to introduce a faulty product, but in a way, it's like putting a price on your helmet. You can't really put a price on your helmet, and having an extra safety feature with you, you also can't put a price on. So, I don't want to be negative, but other cases where it might not work, it's still better to have than not. And I'll take any chance I can get with how dangerous it is out there. If something even gives me a false alarm, I'm happy to have my friends know where I am at all times.
And with that, a lot of these other like companies tend to do a subscription model base, which we're trying to stay away from. We don't want there to be any major barriers of entry or being out there and all of a sudden, oh, I forgot to pay my subscription, now my friend's dead. And so we really want to avoid that. Like I said, the main focus is safety, and we don't think they can compete with that to whatever level we're at.
Sorry, one more technical question. But how do you plan on catching the attention of the friends with the little device?
So the system on it has flashing lights, really, really bright, and they have multiple sounds and high-pitched noise, even vibrations on it. Like I said, even if you're going through deep snow piles, the odds that you don't catch a glimpse of that going off or hearing it, even if you have music on, it's pretty startling and jarring to anyone. So again, if your friend didn't know that, you probably have bad friends.
And you have other friends. You don't only bring one friend with you.
Exactly.
So.
All right. Thank you guys
Thank
very
you very
much.